Hello, this video is an introduction to film and particularly film analysis. We're going to be talking about a few things over the next couple of videos, and the focus of this is really looking at the role of the camera and what the camera does and how it communicates. And you can see the subtitle here is about using techniques to communicate meaning, and really that's what it's all about. Now look, the starting point to really take into account here is the fact that film is a deliberate form of communication. Nothing is done by accident. Okay? We don't have people going out with these million-dollar budgets just grabbing a camera and filming whatever's in front of them. There's a lot of planning and precision behind it. You know, for any film, you'll often see something like this. This is a storyboard, and these are created in a lot of detail for the entire film. And what you're seeing here is a number of different images. But this may very well only capture a few seconds of the film itself. But it goes to show that the director in this case has thought about every single shot that's going to be taken by the camera and how this is going to tell the story. And that's a really important thing when it comes to film. And you need to keep that in the back of your mind. Nothing's done by accident. Everything's done consciously, on purpose. A couple of things to remember in recognition of that is that the director has an atmosphere in mind when they're filming it. You know, they want it to be scary or suspenseful or action-packed. And everything in the film needs to work together to create that. So that's not only what we see, it's not only the camera, but it's also the audio. We'll be talking in more detail about that later on. There's an important term I want to introduce to begin here, and it's called the suspense of disbelief. Now, when you watch a film, and you've probably had this before, you might be sitting in the audience glued to what's happening in the cinema. You might have seen movies before where you feel like you were there. And the movie itself might not even look very realistic. It might be, here I've got some pictures of, some quite unbelievable looking King Kong adaptations, but these terrified people at the time, and it's because they felt like the movie was real and they were stuck in the middle of it. And that's kind of the goal, is for filmmakers to suspend the disbelief of their audience. They want people to watch it as though it's real. They want people to be affected by it, scared by it, influenced. And with that in mind, if you make a mistake in your movie, like for example here in the movie Troy, there's a plane in the background, or in this case of Pirates of the Caribbean, you can see the Adidas brand sitting in his hat. Now, these things cause people to come back to reality. Okay? All of a sudden, they no longer suspend disbelief. They remind themselves that, oh, that's right, this isn't real, it's make-believe, and as a result, they disengage. So the main point of this video is to just focus on the fact that different shots have different purposes. So what I choose to show has an effect on the story that I'm telling. So let's go through some of the terminology. Now, a close-up generally tends to be of the face, just below the shoulders, with a bit of room at the top of the head, and this really shows the expression of somebody. So if it's an emotional scene, or someone's really saying something with a lot of expression in their face, we'll see a close-up. A mid-shot focuses more on the upper torso, and it's more of an action type of shot, particularly if someone's doing something like shooting a bow or a gun or something like that where the legs aren't really important. Some people also communicate quite a lot with their arms and their hands when they speak, so we might use a mid-shot. A long shot focuses on the whole body. You can see there's usually a bit of room below the feet and above the head, and this really emphasises the whole stature of the person, or the action that they're performing in their entire body. A wide shot, on the other hand, doesn't really focus on a particular person. It focuses more on the broad environment. In this particular shot, you can see that we can see the person and the car, and what we're looking to see is the relationship of the person with their environment. And sometimes a wide shot could be quite far away to emphasise how small and insignificant a person is in the midst of a barren wasteland or something like that. So we've got a couple of more advanced shots that we'll now look at, and some of these involve movement, so you might need to use your imagination. Right, so our more advanced camera movements include the angles that can be used. Now, a common one you'll see is what's called a high-angled shot. You can see in this case we're looking down at this person. This is something that's often used within films to make someone seem like they're vulnerable or they're weak or powerless. And in this case you can see we've used a child, and That's very much what this shot aims to create, like we're looking down at someone as though they're a child. So we naturally, when we see people from this angle, we see them as defenseless and vulnerable, and that can be a deliberate thing. Now, the opposite's also true. Sometimes when we look up at a big character, it's like looking up at a parent or authority figure. So when the camera shows someone from this perspective, our brain tells us that these people are very powerful or very threatening or intimidating. We see some movement sometimes with the camera. In this case, if the camera moves to the side, we call that a pan. And there's not a specific purpose to it, rather than just showing or conveying information, but it's very commonly used, say, in a chase scene, or when something's moving, or two people in this case are moving and talking. But it's just good language to draw on. If the camera moves up and down, we call that a tilt shot. And again, it can often be used to show environment, or the relationship of environment with a particular character, or anything along that line. We see zooms as well, and of course, in this case, you can see I've used a graphic to represent, but zooms can mean zooming in towards a subject or zooming out. And interestingly enough, often when we zoom in, that can represent the realisation of a character. So I could all of a sudden realise something's going on, so the camera will zoom in on me. Whereas the opposite's true for a zoom out. It's often revelation, and it's often revealing something to the audience. The last two things I want to talk about are just in regards to what we call subjective and objective camera. Now, subjective camera makes us feel like we are part of the film. And you'd see these two examples here makes us feel like it's us that are riding the bike, or it's us that are holding the hand of this girl. But it's not necessarily meaning that we have to be the main character and people talk to us. Sometimes it might be the feeling that we're on the ground running along with a character, or running behind them, or perhaps we're sitting in the back seat of a car. And often this is a really important way to make the audience feel like they're included within the film, or like they're there. So if you're trying to really scare someone or make them feel like the excitement of an action scene, you might use subjective camera to make it feel like they're actually on the ground where this is happening. Alternatively, the opposite to this is objective camera. And in cases like this, the camera is supposed to be invisible, so we shouldn't really notice it. And these are great moments when you suspend disbelief, because you think to yourself, well, I'm seeing this, but I'm not there. And I used just a couple of images to support this, one being the shot from Titanic, and of course this was a fairly famous romantic scene. And the idea was that we were seeing these two people communicate in a very intimate way, and if it felt like we were there, like we were a character who was also on the ship, we would feel like that intimacy wouldn't be quite as authentic, whereas what we are in this case is a fly on the wall, like we're seeing it as though we're not there. And similarly, it could be in a really emotional scene. If a person looks very isolated and alone, we might see them using objective camera. And the main traits of objective camera is that it just tends to be very still and invisible. We don't really notice it, and it doesn't make us feel like we're physically there. So there's a few different takes and techniques and languages that you can use there to talk about film, and I certainly hope that you're able to take on all of these different points to really help you out. I hope that you'll check out this video maybe a couple of times, and remember you can skip towards the particular scene that you're looking at for some extra tips. Thanks.